Rich people are not always smarter than everyone else. They simply play a different financial game.
What if the biggest mistake is not playing the wrong game, but never realizing there are different games in the first place?
Most people spend their entire lives trying to earn more money, while wealthy people spend their lives learning how money itself can work for them.
I used to think becoming rich meant finding the perfect career. Now I think it has more to do with making smart decisions over a very long time.
That's an interesting shift, because almost nobody grows up being taught how wealth is actually built.
Instead, we're taught how to get good grades, find a stable job, and hope everything somehow works out.
There is nothing wrong with having a job, but relying on only one source of income can become a dangerous habit.
Especially when one unexpected event can interrupt that paycheck without much warning.
Exactly. Losing a job is stressful, but losing your only source of income is what creates real financial fear.
That explains why some people with average salaries sleep peacefully, while others earning much more constantly worry about money.
Because income and financial security are not the same thing. One depends on today's work, the other depends on yesterday's decisions.
Here's something that always surprises people. Many high earners never actually become wealthy.
That's because a bigger paycheck often creates bigger monthly expenses instead of bigger investments.
The moment someone believes they deserve a more expensive lifestyle after every raise, progress quietly slows down.
It's almost like trying to fill a bucket that keeps getting larger every time you pour more water into it.
And most people never notice the bucket is growing faster than the water.
Do you think social pressure plays a bigger role than people realize?
Absolutely. People often spend money to impress people who are busy trying to impress someone else.
Which means everyone is watching everyone else while almost nobody is watching their own financial future.
Maybe becoming rich starts the day you stop asking how wealthy you look and start asking how financially free you're becoming.
I think one of the biggest financial lies is that earning more automatically solves money problems.
I agree, because if someone cannot manage $1,000 wisely, giving them $10,000 usually just creates bigger mistakes.
Imagine two friends getting the exact same promotion. One increases investments while the other upgrades every part of life.
5 years later, people admire the second friend's lifestyle, but they quietly envy the first friend's freedom.
That's because freedom is difficult to photograph, but expensive purchases are easy to post online.
Social media has almost turned spending into a competitive sport where everyone keeps raising the bar.
The strange part is that nobody asks whether those purchases were made with savings or borrowed money.
That's why appearances have become one of the worst financial indicators you can rely on.
Have you ever noticed that people rarely brag about fully funded emergency savings?
Because saying you have 6 months of living expenses saved sounds boring compared to showing off a brand new sports car.
Yet when life suddenly becomes unpredictable, the boring decision often turns into the smartest one.
Financial success usually looks ordinary while it's being built and extraordinary only after enough time has passed.
Patience might be the most underrated financial skill in the world.
I don't think people hate patience. I think they underestimate what small actions can become after 10 or 20 years.
Compound growth is a perfect example. It simply means your money starts earning money. Then those earnings begin earning even more. The problem is that people expect dramatic results in months instead of meaningful results over years.
We live in a culture that celebrates instant success, even though lasting wealth is usually built very slowly.
Maybe that's why so many people quit just before their good financial habits finally begin paying off.
And that's the hidden cost of impatience. It doesn't just delay wealth. Sometimes it prevents it completely.
Let me challenge that idea for a second. What if someone says they simply don't earn enough to invest?
That's a fair question, but I would ask whether the problem is really income or whether every extra dollar already has a job before it even arrives.
You're saying budgeting is less about restriction and more about giving every dollar a purpose.
Exactly. A budget is simply a plan. Without one, money tends to disappear into things we barely remember buying.
Have you ever checked a bank statement and wondered who spent all that money?
More times than I'd like to admit. Those small purchases always look harmless until you add them together.
That's the dangerous part. Financial leaks are usually tiny, but they never stop dripping.
People search for one big secret to becoming rich while ignoring hundreds of small daily decisions.
Imagine someone paying for 5 subscriptions they barely use every month.
Individually, they seem insignificant, but over several years, they quietly consume thousands of dollars.
It's amazing how carefully people compare prices on a television, yet never question recurring monthly expenses.
Because one purchase feels important, while automatic payments become invisible after a few weeks.
Automation can actually work in your favor if you reverse that habit.
You mean automatically sending money into savings or investments before you have a chance to spend it?
Exactly. The less your emotions are involved, the more consistent your financial progress becomes.
That's interesting because discipline often fails, but good systems keep working even when motivation disappears.
Successful people don't always have stronger willpower. Many simply build better financial systems.
Which explains why habits usually outperform bursts of motivation in the long run.
So maybe becoming rich isn't about making one brilliant decision. It's about making hundreds of ordinary decisions that quietly point in the same direction. Here's something people don't like hearing: your paycheck matters, but your habits usually matter more.
I know someone who doubled their salary in less than 5 years and somehow still lived paycheck to paycheck.
That's because income can fix a cash shortage, but it cannot fix poor financial behavior.
Exactly. If every raise becomes permission to spend more, wealth never gets a chance to grow.
Have you noticed that people celebrate buying bigger houses more than paying them off?
That's because ownership is exciting, while financial discipline rarely gets applause.
Sometimes I think we confuse having expensive things with actually owning them.
That's an important distinction. If the bank still owns most of it, celebrating too early can become expensive.
Some people spend decades paying for decisions they made in a single afternoon.
And many of those decisions happened because they wanted to keep up with someone else's lifestyle.
Comparison might be one of the most expensive habits people never put on a budget.
The funny part is that the person you're trying to keep up with might be doing exactly the same thing with someone else.
It's like running on a treadmill that keeps getting faster but never actually takes you anywhere.
Which is why financial independence begins when you stop competing with strangers and start competing with your past self.
Let me ask you something. Would you rather look successful today or quietly become wealthy over the next 20 years?
I'd choose the second option every time because appearances fade, but freedom keeps paying dividends.
That's a mindset most people don't develop until they've made a few painful financial mistakes.
Unfortunately, experience is one of the most expensive teachers you'll ever meet.
The good news is that you don't have to make every mistake yourself if you're willing to learn from other people's stories.
And that's probably one of the highest returns you'll ever get, learning a lesson without paying its full price.
Let me give you a simple example. Imagine 2 people each receive a bonus of $10,000. The other enjoys a modest trip and invests the remaining money into assets that can grow over time. That's what fascinates me about money. Today's choices often introduce themselves years later.
And by then, most people forget which decisions created the outcome they're living with.
People often ask where successful investors find great opportunities, but they rarely ask how those investors develop patience.
Patience doesn't sound exciting until you realize it can outperform constant activity.
That reminds me of people checking their investment accounts every single day.
It's like planting a tree and digging it up every morning just to see if the roots are growing.
Constantly watching short-term movements can make long-term investing much harder than it needs to be.
Because every small drop feels like a disaster even when nothing important has actually changed.
Fear makes people sell at the wrong time almost as often as greed makes them buy at the wrong time.
Which is why controlling emotions can be just as valuable as understanding numbers.
Money is surprisingly emotional for something that's supposed to be logical.
That's because every dollar represents choices, security, memories, or sometimes even personal identity.
Have you noticed how 2 people can earn the same income, yet feel completely different about money?
One sees every paycheck as freedom while the other sees every paycheck as something that disappears too quickly.
That difference usually starts in the mind long before it shows up in the bank account.
And changing your financial future often begins by changing the way you think before you change the way you earn.
Here's a belief I completely changed my mind about. I used to think saving money was enough.
Saving is important, but money that never grows slowly loses purchasing power because prices tend to rise over time.
That's the part many people overlook. They see the number in their account staying the same and assume nothing is changing.
Meanwhile, the cost of groceries, rent, insurance, and everyday life quietly keeps moving upward.
So the goal isn't just protecting your money, it's helping your money keep up with the future.
Exactly. That's where investing becomes less about getting rich quickly and more about preserving and growing purchasing power over decades.
Some people avoid investing because they think risk means losing everything.
Real risk often comes from not understanding what you're investing in rather than investing itself.
That's why education can be one of the highest return investments anyone makes.
Nobody can permanently take away knowledge that helps you make better financial decisions.
I wish schools spent as much time teaching personal finance as they do teaching subjects most adults rarely use.
Imagine graduating already knowing how credit works, how investing works, and how compound growth rewards consistency.
That alone could save people years of unnecessary financial mistakes.
Instead, many people learn about money only after making expensive decisions they wish they could undo.
It's interesting how people spend weeks researching a vacation, but only minutes deciding on a long-term loan.
The decisions with the biggest financial consequences often receive the least thoughtful attention.
Maybe that's because the future feels distant while today's excitement feels immediate.
Human nature has always preferred immediate rewards over delayed ones.
The people who quietly build wealth learn how to make future rewards feel more valuable than today's temporary excitement.
And once that mindset becomes a habit, financial decisions start becoming noticeably easier.
Let me ask you something. Why do you think so many lottery winners end up struggling financially a few years later?
Because money can change your bank balance overnight, but it rarely changes your financial habits overnight.
That's a powerful distinction. Wealth without discipline often disappears faster than people expect.
Which proves that keeping money can require a completely different skill than earning it.
I know a business owner who lived below his means even after his company became highly profitable.
Most people probably assumed he wasn't doing very well.
Exactly, until they found out he owned several properties, had almost no debt, and could stop working whenever he wanted.
That's the kind of success you can't recognize by looking at someone's clothes or car.
Financial freedom is one of the few achievements that doesn't always announce itself.
And that's why comparing lifestyles can be incredibly misleading.
Have you noticed how some people say they're investing in themselves every time they buy something expensive?
Investing in yourself is valuable, but not everything with a high price tag qualifies as an investment.
A new skill that increases your earning ability is an investment.
Buying something only because it impresses other people is usually an expense wearing an investment's disguise.
That's probably one of the most expensive disguises in personal finance.
It also explains why marketers spend so much time selling emotions instead of products.
They're not really selling a watch. They're selling status, confidence, or the feeling of success.
And if you don't recognize that, you might end up paying for emotions with money meant for your future.
That's why understanding your own behavior can sometimes save more money than finding better investment opportunities.
Because the hardest person to outperform in finance is often the version of yourself making emotional decisions.
Let me challenge another popular belief. Do you think owning a home automatically makes someone wealthy?
Not automatically. A home can be a wonderful place to live, but whether it builds wealth depends on factors like cost, debt, and long-term financial choices.
That's an answer people don't expect because we've been told that buying a house is always the smartest financial move.
Reality is usually more complicated than financial slogans.
The same thing happens with cars. People often buy far more vehicle than they actually need.
Then they spend years making payments on something that loses value almost every day.
Meanwhile, that monthly payment could have been building an investment account instead.
It's amazing how small monthly decisions quietly shape enormous long-term outcomes.
Most people focus on the purchase price while ignoring the lifetime cost.
That's true. Insurance, maintenance, fuel, repairs, and financing can easily change the real cost of ownership.
It's almost like buying a pet without thinking about years of feeding and caring for it.
That's a surprisingly accurate comparison because the purchase is only the beginning of the financial commitment.
People usually ask themselves, can I afford the monthly payment?
A better question might be, what opportunities am I giving up by making this payment every month?
Opportunity cost sounds complicated, but it's simply the value of what you could have done instead.
Every dollar spent today quietly eliminates other possibilities tomorrow.
That's why thoughtful spending is just as important as earning more money.
Exactly, wealth isn't only about making good financial moves, it's also about avoiding unnecessary bad ones.
Sometimes the smartest financial decision is the one nobody notices because nothing new was purchased.
And those quiet decisions often become the foundation of lasting financial freedom.
Here's something I didn't appreciate when I was younger. Every financial decision is also a time decision.
What do you mean by that?
Every dollar you spend today represents hours you already worked. So spending isn't just exchanging money, it's exchanging pieces of your time.
That's a perspective that makes impulse buying feel a lot less exciting.
Exactly. Instead of asking whether something costs $200, ask whether it's worth the hours you spent earning those $200.
That question alone could stop a surprising number of unnecessary purchases.
It also explains why people who value their time often become much more intentional with their money.
Because once you connect money with time, wasting either one starts to feel equally expensive.
Here's another thing people misunderstand. Being frugal doesn't mean refusing to enjoy life.
Right, being frugal simply means spending generously on what truly matters and cutting back on what doesn't.
That's why two financially responsible people can have completely different spending habits.
One might happily spend on travel while another prefers books, businesses, or memorable family experiences.
The common pattern isn't what they spend on. It's that every purchase has a clear purpose.
Compare that with mindless spending where people can't even remember what they bought a month ago.
That's probably happened to almost everyone at some point.
Which is reassuring because making mistakes isn't the problem, repeating them without learning is.
Financial growth looks a lot like personal growth when you really think about it.
I agree. Both require honesty, consistency, and the willingness to delay immediate comfort for a better future.
Maybe that's why building wealth changes more than your bank account. It gradually changes the way you think.
And once your thinking changes, your financial decisions begin changing almost automatically.
Let me ask you something uncomfortable. How many people actually know their own net worth?
Probably far fewer than we imagine because many people track their income but never track what they truly own minus what they owe.
That's an important difference because income tells you how much comes in, while net worth tells you where you're actually heading.
Exactly. Someone earning $80,000 a year can have a lower net worth than someone earning half that amount with disciplined financial habits.
That's the danger of judging financial success by salary alone.
It's like judging a business by its revenue without looking at its profit.
I like that comparison because high sales don't always mean a healthy business.
And a high income doesn't automatically mean a healthy financial life either.
Have you noticed how people love talking about promotions, but rarely talk about reducing debt?
Paying off debt isn't flashy, but it quietly increases your financial options.
Every debt payment you eliminate creates room for future investments.
Which means reducing debt isn't just about lowering stress, it's also about creating opportunity.
That's why cash flow matters so much, because it determines what your money can do every single month.
Cash flow simply means the money coming in compared with the money going out.
When more money consistently stays with you than leaves you, you finally have room to build wealth.
And that's when investing stops feeling impossible because you've created space for it.
Most people search for financial freedom in dramatic changes when it often begins with ordinary monthly decisions.
Those ordinary decisions rarely make headlines, but they quietly shape extraordinary futures.
Maybe becoming rich isn't about finding one perfect opportunity. It's about consistently making better choices than you made yesterday.
And when those better choices become habits instead of exceptions, wealth stops feeling like luck and starts becoming the natural result of your actions.
Here's something that changed the way I think about money. Every dollar has a job. If you don't assign it one, someone else will.
That's why advertising is so effective, because companies have entire teams figuring out how to give your money a purpose before you do.
It's almost impossible to avoid every temptation, but it's completely possible to become more intentional.
Intentional spending doesn't remove joy. It simply makes sure your money reflects your priorities instead of your impulses.
Have you ever noticed how buying something feels exciting before you own it and ordinary not long after?
That's called adaptation. We quickly get used to what once felt special, which is why chasing happiness through spending rarely lasts.
It explains why the excitement of a purchase often disappears long before the payment's due.
And that's a lesson many people learn only after looking at a credit card statement.
Credit cards aren't the enemy. Misunderstanding how to use them responsibly is the real problem.
Exactly. Used wisely, they can be useful financial tools. Used carelessly, they can quietly become expensive burdens.
People often ask where they should invest first, but sometimes the better question is what financial mistake should they stop making first?
Avoiding a costly mistake can create a return that's just as valuable as finding a great investment.
That's because protecting your money is just as important as growing it.
Warren Buffett once said the first rule of investing is not to lose money, and while no investment is risk-free, the principle reminds us that preserving capital matters.
Too many people chase the highest possible return without asking whether they truly understand the risk they're taking.
And when something sounds unbelievably easy or unbelievably profitable, that's usually the moment to become more skeptical.
Real wealth rarely comes from shortcuts. It usually comes from consistency, patience, and good judgment repeated over many years.
Which is encouraging because those qualities are available to almost anyone willing to practice them.
Maybe that's the biggest secret of all. Becoming rich isn't reserved for perfect people. It's built by ordinary people making extraordinary decisions consistently.
And that's why the path to wealth often looks surprisingly simple, even if staying on that path requires remarkable discipline.
When people ask me for the fastest way to become rich, I usually think they're asking the wrong question.
The better question is how to become wealthy in a way that's sustainable enough to last for the rest of your life.
That's an important difference because getting rich once is impressive, but staying wealthy requires an entirely different mindset.
Exactly. Wealth isn't measured by your biggest financial year. It's measured by how many good financial years you can repeat.
Looking back, what do you think is the biggest lesson we've talked about today?
For me, it's realizing that money is less about mathematics and more about behavior.
I couldn't agree more because most financial mistakes happen despite people already knowing the right answer.
Knowledge creates possibilities, but consistent action creates results.
Maybe that's why personal finance is called personal. Every decision reflects your habits, priorities, and values.
And no investment strategy can permanently outperform poor daily financial behavior.
I also hope people stop comparing their financial journey with someone else's highlight reel.
Comparison steals contentment while patience quietly builds confidence.
If someone watching this feels behind, what would you tell them?
I'd tell them the best time to improve their finances may have been years ago, but the second best time is the decision they make today.
One good habit won't change your life overnight, but hundreds of good habits absolutely will.
That's how lasting wealth is built, one thoughtful decision after another, repeated until success becomes the natural outcome.
Financial freedom isn't about buying everything you want. It's about never feeling trapped by money again.
And that's a goal worth pursuing regardless of your age, career, or current income.
If this conversation challenged the way you think about money, then we've accomplished exactly what we hoped.
Subscribe for more intelligent discussions about money, investing, business, and building long-term wealth, and we'll see you in the next conversation.